1777, a year after the Declaration of Independence was ratified and signed. The United Colonies of America were fighting a bloody war against the British Crown. But, despite risks from English soldiers and German Hessians, there was a bigger threat looming against the Patriots. Not a musket, naval ship, or another enemy power. In fact, not even human. It was the most deadly adversary ever to face man: disease. John Adams, who would later become America's second president, wrote to his beloved wife, Abigail, "Disease has destroyed 10 men for us, where the sword of the enemy has killed one." In a force that was already small and shrinking, this was a devastating trend. One disease in particular frightened John Adams, George Washington, and colonial society: smallpox. This affliction killed anywhere from 10 to 60% of its non-immune hosts, and those who survived would often lose their vision or be left with intense scarring from the pox sores. During the years of the Revolution, 1775 to 1782, it is estimated to have killed 130,000 people. The smallpox disease is caused by the variola virus and is spread exclusively by humans. This disease probably originated in Africa around 10,000 BC and was brought to the Americas during the time of European colonialism. Smallpox was among the primary diseases that wiped out the indigenous population of North and South America. Hundreds of years later, in 1977, smallpox would be eliminated from the human world through a Herculean effort of science, public health, and humanitarianism. However, centuries before its eradication, there was still another potential solution for the risk of smallpox in the American Army. It would still be several decades before the smallpox vaccine, the first of its kind, was to be invented by Edward Jenner, but earlier traditions had allowed for some to be inoculated against the virus. This simple procedure, though risky, would decrease the probability of death from smallpox from 10 to 60% to 1 to 2% of cases. During the inoculation process, a physician would take the pus from a pustule of someone who is already infected, create an incision in the healthy patient, and expose the healthy person to the infected pus. The second patient would then experience a mild case of the smallpox, and would normally get over it more quickly and have a much higher survival rate. An African slave by the name of Onesimus is commonly credited with bringing the idea of inoculation to the Americas. In 1721, he explained to his master, Cotton Mather, that Africans commonly practiced variolation, similar to inoculation, where the infected pus would be rubbed on an open wound, and that it kept the participants largely immune from subsequent smallpox infections. This practice likely originated in China in the 10th century, and eventually spread throughout the Eastern and African world. Though some rejected the idea for religious and racially prejudicial reasons, many eventually adopted Onesimus and Mather's method, likely saving thousands of lives. This technique lived on until Edward Jenner's revolutionary cowpox vaccine in the year 1798. Fearing that the plague of smallpox would eventually wipe out his fighting force, Washington attempted mass inoculation of his army. This was a risky move, especially since many soldiers were fearful of this procedure, and this large-scale application of inoculation was among the first of its kind. While smallpox was previously a deadly plague that would kill many soldiers, the consequence of the inoculation effort was massive. Dr. Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence and the Surgeon General of the Continental Army, wrote, quote, "The smallpox, which once proved equally fatal to thousands, has been checked in its career, and in a great degree subdued by the practice of inoculation. Without this inoculation effort, many more Continental soldiers would have died or become disabled from smallpox, likely crippling George Washington's army and changing the outcome of the war. Instead, through a mix of cultural crossing and scientific bravery, hundreds were preserved from the deadly disease and were left to fight on another day."